Well, you definitely need to be able to understand that you exist across time. Um,
Okay, suppose a newborn baby does not understand that it exists across time, which is actually um, probably true. Like it doesn't even have like babies don't even have object
yeah, I'll
permanence.
grant that. I'll
So
totally agree to
so
that.
do you think it's okay to kill newborn babies?
No, I don't think it's okay to kill them, but I think
Okay, well,
wouldn't call it a murder. I
you
would say
wouldn't call killing a 3 month old baby that does not have object permanence murder.
if yeah, if the kill if I yeah, because I believe murder is the killing of a being with a certain level of rationality. Infants don't have that.
What's
Hello.
up?
Hi.
Uh,
So, yeah, before you were talking about abortion, and I just wanted to talk about that with you.
sure.
Let me just. So, you said you had a debate with Avi. I didn't see it, but you said he changed your perspective on it.
Yeah.
So you think that abortion is immoral, relatively early in the gestation?
I still want to talk to him about that. I'm not convinced. He'd have to explain some of that to me. My
I was just
understanding
curious,
previously was that
what specifically you find immoral about abortion?
so there's no symmetry breaker between um, like say a chicken or something like a sentient animal and a fetus where it would be morally acceptable to kill a fetus that's sentient under circumstances where I don't know, you just arbitrarily want to get an abortion just to see how it feels, or maybe there's some sort of inconvenience where you knew the risks of having unprotected sex, but you did it anyway, and then just because it's inconvenient for you to have a baby, you want to get an abortion. Like under circumstances like that, there's just no symmetry breaker.
So you think that the killing of the fetus would be comparable to the killing of a chicken?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I guess where I kind of disagree. I don't really have any studies to back this statement up, but intuitively, I think that fetuses probably aren't sentient in the way that a chicken would be. Um, I mean, closer to birth they might be, but I don't really.
Sure. There are, let's see, like there are insects that would arguably have a similar level, if not higher level of intelligence compared to, or sentience compared to like an early fetus. I mean, we could find analogous organisms with similar levels of intelligence and sentience. Like, would you be okay with just murdering insects or something like that? Like, I don't know, a cicada or a bee. I don't know.
Um, I mean, for the record, I don't really have a position on this. I'm just kind of more so just having a conversation about it.
Yeah, sure.
Um, um, I I mean, so long as there's no harm done, and if I mean, I don't really.
Well, like, murder implies harm being done.
Um, well, I would reserve the word murder for a particular type of killing. I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that you murder an ant if you step on an ant. I really wouldn't consider that murder. You might have killed the ant. I prefer to reserve the word murder for a
Why
particular.
wouldn't that be murder? Like, let's say you see an ant, you deliberately step on it. Why wouldn't that be murder?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about the semantics of what we should call murder, I would reserve the killing of a person as, as a murder. And if you were to kill an ant, you're still killing, but it's definitely a different. It's a much lesser killing.
Okay, so if there were a theoretical human being that had the same level of sentience and intelligence as an ant and you shot it in the head, would that not be a murder?
Uh, no, it wouldn't be.
Okay, dude. So how smart does something have to be for it to be a murder? Or smart or
Uh,
intelligent?
I mean, I guess for me, it would be. You would have to have self-awareness. You would have to understand that you
Ants
exist.
are self aware. Actually, ants are one of the few animals that can pass the mirror test, if you didn't know that.
No, I didn't. Empirical facts aren't really my strong suit. Uh, I more so dabble in theory. Um, but
Okay, well, you can't use self awareness as the argument then. Um, because ants do in fact have self-awareness. They actually have self-awareness to the extent where they're one of the few animals that can pass the mirror test. I think chimpanzees can. I believe pigs can, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe. Um,
I've seen felines in it, like
yeah,
large.
yeah. I've seen some cats actually recognize themselves in the mirror. Not all of them
Um,
though.
I wouldn't. I'm not convinced that ants are self-aware. I mean, yeah,
Well, they can pass the mirror test. They know that they see themselves in the mirror.
okay, so they understand that they exist. Well, well, that was
Like,
basically
how
my
do you
starting
even
point.
define self-awareness? Because I mean, they even if they couldn't pass like a mirror test, they'd
Mm,
need to be able to navigate and like they fight over things. They can navigate. Like if they had no self-awareness, then they wouldn't be able to travel anywhere because they wouldn't have any sense of where their body is. They wouldn't fight over resources because what would be the point? They don't know that they exist. So, like, every animal has some level of self awareness. But yeah, like, ants can even pass the mirror test. So, like, it's an absolute empirical proof that they're self aware. So, you haven't given me a symmetry breaker. Or
Well,
you
I
haven't
would
given me,
definitely
like, a
say, well,
standard.
rationality would be, well, for me, a person is a rational being, and I would definitely argue that ants are not rational beings.
Okay, are chickens rational? Are, like, cats and dogs rational?
Uh,
Like, what do you mean by rational?
well, so a being with the ability to reason.
Okay, like to what like can you give me an example of being able to reason? Like to what extent? Like do you think a dog can
Um,
reason? Can a cat or
well,
chicken reason?
well, I would consider reason to be it's a thought process that involves logical thought. So,
Okay.
to say, P, if P then Q, therefore Q.
Okay, do you think a
That's
cat
rationality.
can do you think like a cat or a chicken or something can understand like a modus ponens?
No, I would I would doubt it. No.
Yeah, so like you you'd be okay with killing like a cat then or a chicken?
Well, I kind of forgot where we were at, to be honest. I feel like
Well, we got sidetracked a little bit, but you said killing an ant isn't murder. I think it still
yes, yes,
pertains
yes,
to the
yes, yes.
main
All right. So we
thing.
were talking about what constitutes murder.
Yeah, so you're basically saying because a fetus has such a low level of sentience, it wouldn't be murder. But you're
Yes, yes.
saying like you're giving reason like attributes for what would constitute murdering a
Yes.
sentient being. So it can't be self awareness because even an ant has self awareness. And then we're on to
Yeah,
now
well,
reasoning.
self-awareness, yeah, I was just like, I'll move on from that one. Because I couldn't really come up with a a strong definition of
Right.
self-aware.
So
So
so now you're talking about logic. So
yeah, I would consider a person in order to be in order to be considered a person, you would need to have a level. You would need to have rationality, and if you if you I want to reserve the killing of a person. I want to reserve the word murder for the killing of a person, and a person is a being with a certain level of rationality.
oh, okay, and what level would that be?
I wouldn't be able to say. I mean, you know,
Well,
I
if you
there's
can't
not.
say like if you can't even define your terms, then like
Well,
how could you even come up with an argument? Like you're saying you
well, no,
have to
I
meet a
can say
certain level.
I can say that there exists a level of rationality. And not know what that level is. Um, but
If
I
you're going to claim, well no, if you're going to claim that it's not murder to kill a being below a certain level of rationality, you have to at least loosely define what that level is.
well, what I can say is that ants have no level of rationality, and
No, they do.
therefore it's not murder to
They
kill them.
absolutely do. No, they absolutely do. So they coordinate with one another, and they actually strategically choose where to put their ant hives. So no, they do have some level of rationality. Other insects do similar things. Bees actually have their own sort of language, and they will look for areas to nest. So certain drones will go out, look for areas. They'll go back to the hive and communicate with one another where the location they found is, how far away it is, and certain qualities about the area. And they'll actually decide whether or not they should move. So no, even insects as insignificant as ants, bees, they have some level of reasoning capability where they'll strategically choose where to make their homes for best ability to survive.
I wouldn't consider that I don't think it might not be rationality. For me, you have to have a subjective thought process where you were thinking things through for it to be considered reason. They might just be automata. They just might be robots that, have these behaviors which allowed them to survive.
Why would you assume that?
Uh, well, I would imagine that their nervous systems are very much different from ours. Well, I know that, thought processes, subjective experiences of thought that we have probably require a similar neurological um, system. And I
So
would,
just Yeah, so just because they're lower on the sentient spectrum and lower on the intelligence spectrum, that doesn't mean there isn't some level of reasoning going on. I mean, the fact that they'll communicate with one another, and as a group, they'll decide where to go. I think that does show some level of thinking going on. You can see instances of people trying to get into their car, and then these huge, massive fucking colonies of bees are just swarmed on their car and they can't get in. Then, like 30 minutes later, they'll all be gone. So they they'll do shit like that where they'll scout out an area and they think they found an area, and then they analyze the surroundings and whether or not it's viable, and then they'll leave. So even if it's not a very complex thought process, it seems like there is still thought going on, and they'll try to the best of their capability to use some sort of reasoning to determine where to make their nest.
I, I would find, I imagine that their experience is probably similar to that of I don't know what it's called, but like basically it's an automatous vacuum that just, wanders around and, has sensors in it and just vacuums your house or like an automated vacuum for your pool. I imagine that their behave that the experience of and well, I would find that I think their behaviors are analogous to that. And I doubt that I doubt that there's any consciousness that co- I don't know if there I think it's questionable if there's anything of what it's like to be an ant or a bee.
Why would you assume that? They have a brain, nervous system. They act unique and differently. Certain colonies will have preferences with where to nest. Like I don't know why you'd assume that. Like, would you also assume that of human beings? Like, are we autonomous? Do we do the same shit? Like, I mean, most people do the same shit as everybody else. We watch the same shows, have the similar fucking jobs and lifestyle. Are we just automata? Like, do we not think
No,
or
we think
feel?
we no that
How do you
that's
know? You'd
well,
only
I
know
mean,
that of yourself. You can't know other minds. So, since like all of us act so similarly, like if you were to look at like from the sky, the movement of human beings, is it really like any different than like the movement of ants? Like
uh,
we all do the same shit, we all go to the same places, watch the same shows, we like fucking breed, have kids and fucking die. Like we all do the same basic things. I don't know why you like I don't know why you're making these assumptions about insects, which have the structures required for sentience, but you reject the idea that they're sentient, and then you don't apply that standard to human beings.
well, firstly, the reason would I would well, the reason I believe human beings have sentience, they have a high level of consciousness is because I'm a human being and I subjectively feel that. So I'm going to inductively reason that other humans have similar experiences to me, but ants and bees are so different from me, and their nervous systems are so much less complex than mine that I doubt that they have anything near the type of experience that I have.
Sure, I'd agree with that. That doesn't mean they're not sentient.
Uh, Fine if you want, but what? How are you defining sentience? Are you defining sentience as the ability to feel pleasure and pain, or are you defining it as
No, sentience is just merely the ability to have a subjective experience. It's entirely
okay?
possible that a being could be sentient and not feel either
Yeah,
sensation.
yeah.
But like
Yeah,
you,
okay.
you're so, dude. You agree with me that bees and ants are sentient?
Yes, but I don't think it might not be a sentience that gives them moral status.
Okay, so what level of sentience do you have to have?
Well, if you well to have moral status, you should at least have the ability to feel pleasure and pain. Otherwise, nothing can benefit or harm you. If ants and bees don't have the ability to feel pleasure and pain, then I don't think they
Have
have moral
you?
status.
Okay, so have you ever tried to burn ants with a magnifying glass?
Um, maybe when I was a kid. I don't remember,
Yeah, did you ever
probably.
notice that when that extremely intense beam of heat would go on an ant, they would start running extraordinarily frantically and erratically, trying to get away from you?
Sure.
So, is that not evidence that they can feel pain?
Um, I-
And I
no,
believe this is being like this isn't even a scientific question at this point. Like insects are confirmed to be able to feel pain. Pretty sure they even have nociceptors.
oh, well, yeah, I'm not really sure about that, but I mean, I could build a robot or a
Yeah.
computer that will
So they
avoid
they do
that
have
will.
nociceptors.
Hmm?
So this is like if you just Google this, this is actually a there's an actual study. It's an article covered in the Smithsonian Study finds insects can experience chronic pain. Injured fruit flies still experience nerve pain after healing, finding that could lead the way to more non opioid pain medications. So they have a brain nervous system and they have nociceptors required to feel pain. So they can feel pain. I'd imagine they would also be able to feel pleasure as well. I think that would be true of basically any animal. Like every creature is pleasure seeking. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any sort of reason to like find food or water or mate.
Mhm. Uh,
So
yeah, well, I mean, I guess going back to the original point, I guess I mean disagreement was, I want to reserve the word murder for the killing of a rational being, and you want to use the word murder to include beings with any level of sentience.
yeah, and like what's it called? We've gone over this so far. So we've gone over rationality. Even creatures as insignificant and unevolved as insects have capability to reason. At least some insects. Then you went over pain and pleasure. Okay, well, even insects have ability to feel pain and pleasure. That's absolutely confirmed scientifically with research. Like, what else? What else do you have?
My I'm sticking to my original claim that there is a level of rationality that a being must that murder is the killing of a being with a certain level of rationality, and ants and bees are nowhere near that level.
Okay,
Uh,
so what level of rationality do you need?
uh, well, you definitely need to be able to understand that you exist across time. Um,
Okay, suppose a newborn baby does not understand that it exists across time, which is actually um, probably true. Like it doesn't even have like babies don't even have object
yeah, I'll
permanence.
grant that. I'll
So
totally agree to
so
that.
do you think it's okay to kill newborn babies?
No, I don't think it's okay to kill them, but I think
Okay, well,
wouldn't call it a murder. I
you wouldn't
would say
call okay, so you wouldn't call killing a 3 month old baby that does not have object permanence murder.
if yeah, if the kill if I yeah, because I believe murder is the killing of a being with a certain level of rationality. Infants don't have that. I'm not saying that it doesn't
Okay,
make the
cool.
killing.
So
I'm not
all
saying
right.
that the
So, right. So, if I were to break into a maternity ward and smash every newborn baby's head in with a hammer, are you saying I shouldn't be charged with murder? It should be some other
no,
charge?
absolutely no. Well, obviously, legally speaking, it constitutes murder, but I,
Why would we have a separate standard for murder in a legal sense?
well, I'm not
Like,
saying
don't you
that.
think our legal system should represent our moral views?
No, of course, but it doesn't. That's so I know that
Well,
obviously
if you're gonna,
legally,
so wait, if you were gonna make a moral system, then you would be in favor of not having it be murder.
yes, you could call it you could call it something else. It's a much lesser killing than of, a being who's 18, 20, has full,
Oh my
you know,
god!
human faculties.
Oh my god, dude!
You don't think so?
This is fucking insane.
I'm actually surprised. You really don't agree with
This
that?
is so funny.
Do you actually think that the killing of a 3-month-old is
Yes,
equivalent to the killing
yes,
of a
that's
20-year-old?
murder. I wouldn't say
No,
it's equivalent, but I'd still call it murder. It doesn't have to be equivalent.
okay. Well, no, I'm not saying. Firstly, I don't want my argument, well, my claims to be misrepresented. I'm not saying that the killing is justified. I'm not saying it's morally permissible. I'm just saying that that given my definition of murder, it would not meet the criteria.
Okay.
Um, I mean, I guess I guess to clarify my position a little better is I believe murder is a particular type of killing that is uh a very that that is much more immoral than other types of killing that that are common in the world. Um,
That does not make any sense to me.
well, I think that there are many types of killings, but I think that the killing of a person is much worse than the killing of, say, a chicken, a cow, a horse. Uh,
I don't see, just because something is worse, I don't understand how that wouldn't constitute murder.
well, I guess yeah. Then it's
Like,
just a
like the
semantic.
main problem here, dude, is you won't even define your terms. Like you're talking about how there's a certain level of sentience or certain level of intelligence or certain level of I don't know, cognitive capability, but then you won't define what that level is. Like you can't
Well,
even
because
give me an animal example.
I cannot say with full confidence what that level is. For example, for example, you know that in
Okay,
theory there.
dude. Okay, dude. You know what? If you can't define your terms, then there's just simply
Well,
nothing to argue against
I'll
because you
give
don't
you
even
an
have a
example. I'll
position.
give you an example. You know
No,
that
no,
there's.
dude. If you can't define your terms, like what level of sentience would or what level of
But
cognitive capability would define a
can
murder,
you
then you,
draw the
you don't have an
line
argument.
between baldness and heroicness?
Baldness and hairedness.
Yeah, heroicness. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. You know that there is. You know that there is that there exists. You know, like the
Well,
quality of
I'm not.
having.
I'm not making an argument for what constitutes bald and what constitutes having hair. So I don't. I don't see how that's
No,
relevant. You're the one claiming.
the point is
Like,
that
dude, look. This argument's over. I think you should kind of think about things a bit more and define your terms. If you're not going to define your terms, then there's nothing to argue against. So, thanks for
all right.
coming on, dude. But take care.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, that was the most insane conversation I've had in a while.